Imagine a security professional. They're just observing, right? Standing there watching. To the casual eye, well, they might just look like they're watching. But what if there's something way more complex going on behind those eyes? What if it's not just about looking, but this intricate, multi-layered cognitive thing? Like being tuned in not just to what is happening, but what might happen next. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are getting into something that could really shake up private security, vigilancia consciente, or conscious vigilance. And look, this isn't just some new buzzword. It's framed as a revolutionary approach, pulling together stuff from, well, all of our neuroscience, psychology, even AI. It's about completely rethinking how we do security, moving way past those old, often just reactive methods. Now, to guide us today, we've been digging into this really fascinating strategic plan. It's called Vigilancia Consciente en Seguridad Privada 2025. And this thing, it doesn't just talk about a new way of doing things. It lays out a whole multidimensional framework, calls it a paradigm shift, and it even gets into the risks involved. So our mission today is to basically unpack this whole idea, give you a shortcut to understanding what it truly means to be aware in security, and how this could change the entire industry. For everyone's safety, really.
And it's incredibly timely, wouldn't you say? I mean, the world's changing so fast. The threats we face now are, well, they're evolving constantly. We're seeing more complex stuff, cyber-physical attacks, sophisticated social engineering. The old ways of thinking just don't cut it anymore. This framework, it's not just a minor tweak. It's aiming for a truly holistic solution. And what's interesting is how it's rooted in, human psychology, but then gets this massive boost from tech. It's really about empowering the people on the ground, giving them the tools, the mindset to be active, conscious participants in security, not just passive observers waiting for an alarm.
Okay, so let's really unpack conscious vigilance. When people hear that term, what's the first thing they usually get wrong? How does this plan set them straight right away?
That's a great place to start, actually, because, yeah, the common thought is, oh, it just means paying better attention or maybe being more alert. Simple, right. But the plan makes it clear from the get-go. It's way more intricate than that. It's not like one single skill you learn. It's more of a synthesis, a blend of several distinct but deeply interconnected things. We're talking about a physiological state, a cognitive function, an introspective practice, even a proactive skill, all working together. Think of it like an orchestra, maybe. Each section, the strings, the brass, whatever has its part, but it's when they play together that you get something really powerful. Much more than just one instrument. Understanding these different layers, these dimensions, that's really the key to seeing why modern security needs more than just watching. It's a whole integrated system.
An integrated system. Okay. Starting right down to the biological level. So tell us about that neurophysiological piece. How does the plan define vigilance as that basic alertness?
Right. So at its most fundamental level, the plan talks about vigilance as the state of basic alertness. It's a biological condition, really. A high level of activity, lots of information flowing between you and your environment, keeping you switched on. And this state, it's mainly kept going by something called the reticular activating system. It's deep in the brainstem. Think of it as like the brain's main power switch. It keeps you awake and ready to process what's coming in. But here's a really, really crucial distinction the framework highlights. We have to separate this neurological vigilance, this state of being ready from consciousness or awareness. They aren't the same thing. Vigilance is a state of preparedness, the biological readiness. Awareness, though, that's the conscious act of noticing, of actively perceiving things. Maybe think of it like this. A computer that's turned on, power light is on, it's humming away in the background. That's vigilance. It's ready. But a computer that's actively running programs, analyzing data, showing stuff on the screen, that's awareness. It's doing something with its readiness. Both are absolutely essential, right? But awareness builds right on top of that vigilant state. So conscious vigilance is exactly that powerful combination. Being alert, yes, but also being fully, deliberately aware of yourself, aware of what's around you. This neurophysiological alertness, it's the absolute foundation, the biological starting point for everything else we're going to talk about. Without it, the rest doesn't happen.
That's a vital distinction, yeah. Computer on versus computer running programs. Makes sense. So if the physiological part is the computer being on, then sustained attention, that's the program running maybe, which brings us to that psychological layer. Vigilance as sustained attention. How does the framework talk about this cognitive function? What's the history behind it? in security.
Right. We're looking at how well someone can stay focused on tasks where they need to spot signals, process things efficiently, but over a long time. This idea of sustained attention, it's not actually new. It goes back to some really important research by a guy named Mackworth way back in 1948, and he was tackling real-world problems like radar operators getting fatigued during World War II. Staring at those screens for hours, trying to pick up faint signals. Mackworth's work really pioneered the study of what he called the decrement of vigilance, basically performance dropping off during these long, boring, attention-heavy tasks. And this decrement, this drop-off, it's a huge problem in many security roles, isn't it? Consciously processing stuff, unlike just reacting automatically, takes effort.
It uses up our limited cognitive resources. So if a security person is trying to stay hyper-focused for too long, well, their ability is going to drop. It just is. This points to the obvious need for breaks. Of course, you can't just stare at monitors for 8 hours straight without losing it. But maybe more importantly, it highlights why we need practices that actually help cultivate and maintain attention. I mean, most of us have felt this, right? Trying to focus on a really tedious task for ages, your mind just starts wandering. Now imagine that feeling, but the stakes are incredibly high. For security folks, that sustained vigilance could be the difference between stopping something bad and, well, not. It's a massive challenge. And this framework tackles it directly.
Exactly. And that leads perfectly into the introspective dimension. This is where conscious observation gets framed as mindfulness. This part turns the focus inward. It's about watching our own mind, as the plan puts it, learning to reject thoughts driven by fear or ego or those automatic knee-jerk reactions we all have. This lines up really well with mindfulness practice attention plana, becoming a kind of non-judgmental witness to your own thoughts and feelings, not getting swept away by them. And what's really powerful here is how it's described as de-identification, moving away from just impulsive reacting towards a more considered, intentional responding. The strategic plan is also careful to point out that the kind of mindfulness it's talking about here is evidence-based. It fits with neuroscience, with psychology. It's not just some mystical thing anymore. The idea is a mind that's just left running on its own, a non-vigilant mind, is full of distractions, internal noise. Mindfulness gives you the tools to actually notice that noise, to regulate it. It gives you the power to choose how you respond instead of just being pushed around by your thoughts. Think about a guard who sees someone acting suspiciously. An untrained mind might jump straight to conclusions, maybe based on fear, maybe on bias, could lead to a bad outcome. But a mindful guard. They observe the situation, process it calmly, consider the options, and then respond with intention, clearly, effectively. That's a total game changer in high-pressure situations.
Choosing to respond, not just react. That feels like a core principle here. And building on that internal awareness, that self-regulation, we then look outwards again with the proactive part. Situational awareness. How does the plan define this? And what are those key phases involved? Okay, situational awareness. The plan defines it as being able to identify, process, and really understand all the important stuff happening in your environment right now in real time. It's a concept that actually came out of aviation, funnily enough. Makes sense, right? Pilots absolutely need to know what's going on around them. And it's obviously critical for any kind of proactive security work. The plan breaks down the cognitive cycle for situational awareness into 3 key phases. They're distinct, but they flow together. First, there's perception. That's just gathering the raw data through your senses, asking what's happening, sounds, sights, movements, just taking it all in. Second phase is comprehension. This is where you interpret that data. You figure out why it's happening, giving context to those perceptions, making sense of it all. And then the third and most advanced phase, projection. This is a really proactive bit. Predicting what might happen next. Based on what you've perceived and understood, you anticipate future possibilities. And that anticipation allows you to make a critical decision before something bad fully unfolds. It's about getting ahead of the curve, acting preemptively.
And what's so illuminating, I think, is how the framework shows these 4 dimensions aren't just separate skills you tick off a list. The physiological alertness, the cognitive sustained attention, the introspective mindfulness, and the proactive situational awareness, they form a clear hierarchy. They depend on each other. Think of it like building blocks or maybe a pyramid. Proactive situational awareness, the highest operational level, it absolutely needs strong, sustained attention underneath it. And that sustained attention, well, it gets much better, much more stable if you practice mindfulness. That introspective work strengthens the attention muscle, so to speak. And none of that is possible without that fundamental basic state of physiological alertness we talked about first, the computer on state. So this hierarchy means that if there's a problem lower down, maybe someone's just exhausted or stressed out or easily distracted, it inevitably impacts the higher level stuff. the operational goals suffer. And this completely changes how you think about security training, doesn't it? It's not just about teaching isolated skills anymore. It's about cultivating this whole integrated system where the mental well-being of the guard isn't just a nice to have, it's a direct, essential requirement for them to be effective. It shifts training from just doing tasks to fundamentally being capable. That's why this is such a deep dive, you see. It's not just about what you see with your eyes. It's about how your brain processes it and critically how you prepare your mind to do that job effectively, consistently, and consciously.
Okay, that hierarchical view makes a lot of sense. It really paints a picture of an integrated system. And that leads us right into the next big idea in the plan. Conscious vigilance isn't just about better individual performance. It's positioned as a full paradigm shift for the whole private security industry. Because historically, security has been mostly reactive, hasn't it? The model's been about responding after something's already happened. And while, yeah, that's been the backbone for ages, it has that built-in flaw. It's not great at prevention. It always leaves organizations playing catch-up with threats. And in today's world, with threats getting more complex, well, that reactive model just doesn't seem like enough anymore.
Absolutely. And this connects directly to a really insightful model the strategic plan uses, the organizational maturity cycle. It basically describes how an organization's security culture evolves over time through 5 distinct phases. It's like a diagnostic tool, really, for understanding their deep down philosophy about risk. So phase 1 is pathological. The mindset here is pretty bad. Who cares about security if we don't get caught? Security is just a hassle, something to ignore if possible. Then comes reactive. This is where many traditionally start. They only take action after something goes wrong. The motto is, okay, an incident happened, now we do something. Fixing problems after the fact. Moving up, you get to calculative. Here, the organization starts putting formal systems and procedures in place. Security becomes something you measure, something structured. It's often driven by compliance, just following the rules. Then a big shift happens with the proactive phase. The mindset changes from just responding to actively anticipating. The goal becomes, let's anticipate problems. They start actively looking for risks and trying to mitigate them before they cause harm. And the final stage, the most mature, is generative. In a truly generative culture, security isn't just a department or a checklist. It's a core value baked into everything. The thinking is, we have a security-centric system. It's part of the organizational DNA. Security becomes everyone's responsibility, a shared value. Now, this cycle is really powerful because it shows you an organization's blind spots, especially with complex threats. A reactive company might handle a simple break-in okay because they have a procedure for after it happens, but that same company, they're structurally unprepared for things like subtle social engineering or insider threats or those complex cyber-physical attacks. You can't just react to those effectively. Only organizations in the proactive, or ideally the generative phase, can really tackle these nuanced risks because in those cultures, everyone acts like a security sensor, not just the guards. It's about a distributed collective awareness.
Everyone acting as a security sensor. I like that image. It's a big shift. And that's exactly where conscious vigilance seems to fit perfectly. How does it specifically help push organizations up that maturity ladder towards being proactive and generative? Well, conscious vigilance isn't just about fine-tuning the existing reactive model. It's fundamentally about shifting the entire culture. It pushes security beyond just managing systems and ticking boxes. That's the calculus stage towards real anticipation and continuous improvement across the board. In this new model, security stops being the job of just one isolated department, which, let's face it, is often seen as just a cost center. Instead, it becomes a shared value, a collective responsibility. And that elevates security from being a necessary expense to being a strategic asset, something that actually gives the organization an edge. Think about the knock-on effects. Better morale among staff, maybe higher productivity, definitely stronger customer trust. I mean, just imagine the difference in how secure you'd feel in a place that only reacts when things go wrong versus one where everyone, from the top down, is actively working to prevent problems in the first place. It's a huge shift, not just for security, but for the whole feel of the organization.
Right, so let's zoom in now on the people at the center of this shift, the proactive security professional. The plan identifies key human competencies like pillars supporting this new role. The first one, maybe unsurprisingly, is situational awareness again. But here, it's framed as the cognitive engine that turns a traditional guard into what the plan calls a risk predictor. That's a powerful term. It means it's not enough just to spot something unusual. The consciously vigilant professional analyzes it, understands its context, and this is Key projects the potential future consequences. What could happen because of this? And that understanding allows them to take genuinely preventive action. This projection ability, this looking ahead, is what really elevates the role. It's not just about following procedures anymore. It's about performing an intelligence function right there on the ground. It's about understanding the meaning and implications of what you're seeing and acting with foresight. It makes the human element this incredibly valuable proactive asset.
Okay, predicting risk. That's a big step up. And building on that analytical skill, the second pillar mentioned is emotional intelligence, or IE. The framework is really clear here. IE isn't some fuzzy soft skill. It's positioned as a vital operational tool, essential for things like de-escalation and for keeping your own cool under pressure. It helps the security professional manage their own emotions effectively, develop empathy for others, and communicate clearly, especially when dealing with difficult people, maybe someone aggressive or in distress. And the plan points out, quite rightly, that a lack of emotional intelligence is a serious operational risk. It can lead to unnecessary arguments escalating, poor handling of crises, damage to the company's image, even in worst cases, excessive force. Things like active listening, controlling your own impulses to avoid that emotional hijacking where anger or fear takes over, and having genuine empathy. These are absolutely critical components. IE is like the bridge, isn't it? Connecting that cool-headed risk analysis with the messy reality of dealing with actual human beings. You can imagine, right? A minor issue blows up because the guard lacks, IE. Versus an emotionally intelligent response that calms things down, prevents conflict. That's the human touch tech can't really replicate.
Exactly. And underpinning both of those, the situational awareness and the emotional intelligence is the third pillar. Mindfulness and mental resilience. Let's be realistic. Security work often involves, as the plan puts it, medium-high levels of mental load. It can be demanding. Combine that with things like irregular shift patterns, sometimes stressful interactions. It's a clear path towards fatigue and burnout if not managed. So the plan presents mindfulness not as just a wellness fad, but as a scientifically validated operational strategy, a tool for managing risk. And there's solid evidence for this. Studies, for example, on police officers have shown mindfulness training can significantly reduce stress, cut down on burnout rates, even lessen symptoms of PTSD. By helping personnel manage stress and anxiety, mindfulness directly lowers the risk of incidents caused by simple human error or a lack of focus. So suddenly, the mental well-being of your security team isn't just an HR issue anymore. It's a core part of operational risk management. And here's the crucial integration point. These three pillars, situational awareness, emotional intelligence, mindfulness, resilience, they aren't separate things you train in isolation. They form an integrated, mutually reinforcing system. A weakness in one directly undermines the others. Think about it. A guard might have great situational awareness, spots a potential threat early. Fantastic. But if they lack mental resilience because they're stressed and tired, their cognitive resources are low, that makes it harder to properly comprehend the threat, harder to project what might happen. And then, if they also lack emotional intelligence, their interaction with the person involved might be clumsy, maybe even escalate things, totally undermining their initial good observation. So organizations really have to train these things holistically. Just focusing on situational awareness tech or procedures without building the emotional and mental resilience, you end up with a system that might look sharp on paper, but it's fragile. It could break down completely under real pressure. We all know how stress affects our own focus, right? How it makes handling tricky situations harder. Now scale that up to someone whose job is protecting others. The implications are huge.
That idea of a fragile system without holistic training, yeah, that really hits home. But this is where the vision of conscious vigilance gets really futuristic, bringing in technology as a key partner. The framework is clear, though. Tech is an enabler, not a replacement for people. How do these tools help free up humans for the more complex stuff? Well, think about the tech we have now, mobile apps for patrols, GPS tracking, automated logging systems. These tools are great at handling the routine, low cognitive load tasks. Things like documenting patrols, logging standard observations, basic record keeping. Stuff that needs doing but can be repetitive. The whole point is to take that burden off the human guards, free them up to focus on the higher value activities that really need their unique skills, analysis, judgment, decision-making. So the role of the guard changes fundamentally. They stop being just a passive observer writing things down. They become more like an analyst operating right there on the ground, using these tools to help them interpret, judge, and solve complex problems. It's about upgrading their role, not eliminating it.
And this is where AI really comes into its own, positioned as the engine driving proactive vigilance. The framework uses this great phrase, AI as an unceasing, fatigue-free organ of perception. Imagine that. A system that can watch 24/7, never gets tired, never gets bored. Analyzing real-time video feeds, for instance, using smart analytics to spot unusual behavior automatically. This kind of tech can drastically cut down on false alarms, a huge issue in traditional security. And crucially, it directly tackles that fundamental human limitation we talked about, the vigilance decrement, the performance drop-off over time. AI is just perfectly suited to handle the most exhausting part of situational awareness, constantly scanning and filtering huge amounts of information. A human guard trying to watch, say, 50 camera feeds at once, that's incredibly difficult to sustain. But in AI, it can monitor all those feeds tirelessly. And it doesn't just watch, it highlights. It flags the specific screen, the specific moment where something unusual is happening, drawing the human's attention exactly where it's needed. This means the human operator can focus their limited, valuable conscious attention on the critical events that genuinely require their judgment and intervention.
That's a brilliant way to put it. AI handles the relentless vigilance, freeing up humans to provide the essential consciousness. Which brings us right to the heart of this model, the human-technology symbiotic synergy. What does that symbiotic synergy actually mean in practice? How does it blend the strengths of both? Yeah, symbiotic synergy, it's about a true partnership. AI and humans aren't competing here. They're complementing each other. Perfectly, almost. Where one has limitations, the other has strengths. The division of labor makes so much sense. AI provides the vigilance, that tireless 24/7 monitoring, processing vast amounts of data, spotting patterns humans might miss. It's the constant watchful eye. Meanwhile, the human provides the consciousness, things like ethical judgment, empathy, the ability to de-escalate a situation verbally, intuitive reasoning, solving novel problems, stuff that AI, at least currently, just can't do. And what's really revolutionary about this, according to the plan, is that AI fundamentally solved that core problem of vigilance decrement that Mackworth identified way back in the 1940s. Humans are no longer stuck doing a task-sustained, passive observation that we're biologically just not very well suited for over long stretches. This completely changes the job description for security pros, doesn't it? The primary skill isn't just staying awake and watching anymore. It becomes interpreting, judging, and acting based on high-quality, pre-filtered information served up by the AI. I mean, arguably, that's one of the biggest shifts in the security role in decade, maybe even a century. And it's not about robots taking over jobs. It's about technology making humans better at the uniquely human parts of the job, elevating them from observers to strategic decision makers.
Now, integrating human consciousness with this powerful AI surveillance, it absolutely demands a strong ethical and legal framework, right, to make sure it's used responsibly. The strategic plan we looked at really grounds this in the specific context of Colombia, highlighting the crucial role of bodies like their supervigilancia. In many countries, like Colombia, you have these strict regulatory bodies overseeing private security, ensuring everything's legal and professional. This kind of oversight means that adopting advanced practices like conscious vigilance isn't just a good idea. It has to be done in full compliance with the law. It's not optional. The law is there and makes sure that striving for better security doesn't end up trampling on individual rights and privacy. It's a crucial balance.
And that leads directly to a point that's relevant everywhere now: data privacy. Laws like Colombia's Law 1581 from 2012, which covers personal data protection, are absolutely critical here. Because using video surveillance, observing behavior, core parts of conscious vigilance that's clearly defined as personal data processing under these kinds of laws, which means capturing images, recording them, storing them. It all has to follow very strict rules, usually overseen by a data protection authority. The strategic plan highlights several key principles, and these really apply globally. First, consent. Often you need explicit, informed consent before you can process someone's personal data, like their image. You can't just record secretly. Second, privacy notices. Areas under surveillance need clear, visible signs telling people they're being monitored. Transparency is key. Third, purpose limitation. You have to be clear about why you're collecting the data, and it has to be a legitimate, legal reason. You can't just hoard data. And finally, access control and proportionality. Access to recordings must be tightly restricted to authorized people with a genuine need to see them. Data shouldn't be kept longer than necessary. These principles echo everywhere, don't they? With all the growing concerns about privacy in our surveillance-heavy world, there are universal challenges for any organization using this tech.
Absolutely. And this legal framework, interestingly, almost forces security companies to be conscious by default, as the plan suggests. Using advanced surveillance tech isn't just a technical choice anymore. It demands deep thought about the legal and ethical side to avoid massive penalties. What's really fascinating is this tension the plan points out. On one hand, you have the technology pushing towards potentially total surveillance. It kind of evokes Foucault's idea of the panopticon, right? Where power comes from unseen observation. But on the other hand, you have the law pushing back, demanding privacy, demanding limits on that surveillance power. So laws like Leahy 1581 act like a mandatory ethical code for this modern digital panopticon. They force it to have a consciousness. While AI video analytics might be the tech embodiment of Foucault's all-seeing eye, the law steps in and says, hold on, surveillance must be visible, those privacy notices, its purpose must be stated, consent might be needed. It's basically using transparency to counter the power of invisible surveillance. So any modern responsible security organization has to navigate this tricky space. They need to use the power of the tech, yes, but while respecting the legal framework designed specifically to limit that power. Successfully managing this paradox, getting the benefits of surveillance while upholding rights, that's really the mark of a truly conscious security organization. It's a constant balancing act between power and responsibility.
That balancing act between tech, ethics, and law. It naturally leads to the bottom line question for any business thinking about this. Does it make financial sense? The strategic plan tackles this head on, arguing there's a strong economic imperative for conscious vigilance. Investing in this kind of training isn't just seen as a cost, but as a high-return investment. What kind of returns are we talking about? Well, the plan cites studies suggesting things like interpersonal skills training. A key part of emotional intelligence can boost productivity by up to 20% and even cut employee turnover by 30%. And when you apply a similar principle specifically to security training, the potential impact is even clearer. Maybe reducing accidents or incidents by 30% to 50%. I mean, for any organization, those are really significant numbers. They hit the bottom line directly. It reframes security from just a cost center to something that actually adds value.
Absolutely. The plan even breaks down how you'd calculate the return on investment, the ROI, using the standard formula. ROI, benefit, investment 100. And the benefits you plug into that formula are pretty tangible. We're talking fewer security incidents, which means lower insurance premiums, fewer lawsuits, less property damage. Lower staff turnover saves a ton on recruitment and training costs. And potentially, better security leads to higher customer satisfaction, maybe increased loyalty or sales. But what's really insightful is the analysis behind those numbers. The ROI from these seemingly soft skills, like mindfulness or emotional intelligence training, is actually the direct economic result of the neurobiological benefits. Think about it. That 30–50% reduction in incidents. That comes from guards being more focused, less prone to fatigue-related errors, making better decisions because their cognitive load is managed. The 30% reduction in turnover, that's a direct consequence of lower stress, less burnout, leading to a more stable, engaged workforce. So the financial case, the ROI, is completely tied to the psychological model specifically, managing that cognitive load effectively. This gives CFOs a really powerful, data-driven reason to invest. Funding mental wellness and advanced training for security isn't just an HR perk. It's a core operational strategy for cutting risk and boosting efficiency. You're investing in the reliability of your key human sensors, and you can expect tangible financial returns.
Okay, so the business case seems strong. But implementing such a big shift, that's never easy. What does the plan say are the main roadblocks, the challenges organizations face when trying to adopt conscious vigilance? And how can they get past them? Yeah, implementation is always tricky. According to the plan, the biggest hurdle usually isn't the technology itself. It's the culture. It's about overcoming that natural resistance to change that exists in any organization. And it's about changing how security is perceived, moving it away from being seen as just a necessary burden towards being seen as a core shared value. But the plan also suggests ways to tackle this, things like fostering really open communication about the changes, providing continuous training so people feel confident and supported, creating an environment where staff feel valued, and using recognition and positive feedback to encourage the new ways of working. These aren't just token gestures. They're essential for actually embedding this new proactive security culture.
And underpinning all that cultural work is the absolute necessity of professionalization through proper training and certification. In many places like Colombia, this isn't just recommended, it's legally required. Guards often need annual refresher training, maybe 30 hours or so, to keep their licenses valid. The framework stresses that these training programs need to go way beyond just reviewing basic procedures. They have to really focus on building those psychological skills, situational awareness, i.e. resilience alongside the tech competencies. Formal certifications, like national standards for surveillance work, provide a good benchmark for high-quality performance. This kind of serious, ongoing professional development is what ensures that the strategist on the ground isn't just a nice idea, but a genuinely skilled, recognized professional equipped for this enhanced role. #TAG7. Critical perspectives and inherent risks of the practice.
We've talked a lot about the benefits, the transformation. It sounds incredibly positive. But a true deep dive has to look at all angles, right? And the strategic plan is commendable because it does acknowledge potential risks and downsides. Specifically, when we talk about practices like mindfulness, which are so central here, the plan points out that they're not risk-free. It actually mentions documented adverse effects of meditation. That might surprise some people. What kind of effects are we talking about? Well, things like increased anxiety for some, impatience, restlessness, and in rarer, more extreme cases, it mentions potential for more serious issues like depersonalization, feeling detached from yourself, or derealization, feeling detached from reality. There's even a mention of potentially triggering psychotic episodes in individuals who might already be vulnerable. It presents this interesting dilemma. Mindfulness aims to switch off that mental autopilot, which is great for focus and reducing reactive behavior for most people. But for a small number, that very disconnection from their usual thought patterns can apparently be quite destabilizing. It can lead to unexpected and difficult psychological experiences.
Yes, and adding another layer of complexity, some contemplative traditions actually view certain challenging psychological experiences not purely as negative side effects, but potentially as natural stages in deep introspective development. For instance, there's the concept sometimes called the dark night of the soul. This describes a period where someone might experience a profound sense of ego dissolution or emptiness. Now, while that might be seen as transformative within a specific spiritual framework with proper guidance, from a purely clinical viewpoint, the symptoms could look almost identical to severe depression. So if someone goes through something like that without the right context, without qualified support to help them understand and navigate it, it could be incredibly distressing. It could easily be mistaken for or even exacerbate a mental health problem. This really highlights how critical it is to implement these powerful psychological tools with care, expertise, and proper support structures. The goal is growth and resilience, not accidental harm.
Which brings us squarely to the challenge of responsible implementation. It's a really interesting paradox, isn't it? The very tool you're proposing to reduce operational risk, using mindfulness to manage stress and cognitive load, could, if you're not careful, introduce a completely new and potentially quite serious psychological risk for your personnel. A security company isn't a therapy clinic, right? So rolling out these kinds of powerful psychological interventions without doing proper screening first, without using genuinely qualified instructors, and without having robust support systems ready for anyone who struggles. Well, the plan suggests that could be seen as negligent. So it creates a situation to safely use the solution, mindfulness, to fix the problem, operational errors from stress. The organization first has to build the infrastructure to manage the potential risks of the solution itself, those adverse psychological effects. This really changes the recommendation. It's not just a simple go train your staff in mindfulness. It's much more like develop a comprehensive mental health and well-being strategy for your team, and within that strategy, consider the responsible, expertly guided application of mindfulness. It underscores that even the best solutions need careful, ethical, expert handling. There are no real shortcuts when it comes to genuinely caring for your people, especially when their well-being is so directly linked to public safety. #8. A strategic plan for the future of private security.
So pulling all these different strands together, conscious vigilance emerges as this really holistic evolution for private security. It stands on three core interconnected pillars. First, those psychological foundations. Developing situational awareness, emotional intelligence, and mental resilience to turn the guard into an effective analyst and risk manager. Second, that human technological synergy. Using AI to empower humans, creating this powerful hybrid model where tech handles the tireless vigilance and humans provide the crucial consciousness, the judgment, the empathy. And third, the regulatory framework. Laws like Colombia's Ley 1581, which demand ethical conduct and privacy protection, essentially making consciousness not just a good idea, but a legal necessity. It's this integration blending human skills, tech power, and ethical oversight that makes the model feel so potentially revolutionary and, importantly, sustainable.
And for any organization listening that's thinking, okay, this sounds compelling, but how would we actually do it? The strategic plan offers a pretty clear roadmap for adoption, broken down into 4 phases. What are those steps? Right, it lays out a practical path. Phase 1 is diagnosis and managerial commitment. Basically, figure out where your organization currently sits on that maturity cycle we talked about. And crucially, get genuine buy-in from the top leadership. Without that commitment, big changes rarely stick. Phase 2 is training and personnel empowerment. This is where you roll out those holistic training programs, focusing on all 3 psychological pillars. It's about investing in your people, empowering them to make proactive decisions. Phase 3 is intelligent technological integration. This involves carefully choosing and implementing proactive technologies, like AI-driven surveillance, making sure they're seen as tools to enhance human capabilities, not just replace them. And finally, phase 4 is communication and culture. This is the ongoing work of fostering that generative security culture, making security a shared responsibility through open communication, feedback loops, and positive reinforcement. It provides a really practical, step-by-step blueprint for organizations considering this kind of major transformation.
And the ultimate vision painted by this plan. The future of the security professional. It's quite inspiring, actually. The guard of tomorrow isn't just a watchman anymore. They evolve into a proactive security manager, a skilled risk analyst, an effective conflict mediator. Their role shifts fundamentally from just being a procedure follower to becoming a strategist on the ground. A highly trained professional whose job is not just about protecting property, but about safeguarding the physical and psychological well-being of the community they serve, through their skills, their presence, their proactive engagement. So, conscious vigilance as presented here isn't just a fleeting trend. It feels more like the inevitable next step for the security sector moving towards a model that's more effective, more sustainable, and actually profoundly more human.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground. From the basic wiring of alertness in the brain, through deep dives into psychology, cutting-edge AI, complex legal ethics, all the way to this vision of a transformed security professional. What really comes through is that integrating all these fields, neuroscience, psychology, tech, ethics, isn't just a nice-to-have upgrade for security. The argument is it's becoming a necessity. This whole concept of conscious vigilance really does seem to fundamentally shift how we think about safety and protection, moving towards something much more intelligent, proactive, and, as you said, human-centered.
It really does, and it leaves us with a question, perhaps. After exploring how a security professional can become this strategist on the ground, using mindfulness, emotional intelligence, AI, what does it mean for you, listening right now, to be consciously vigilant in your own life? How might you apply these same principles that sustained attention, that self-awareness or introspection, that proactive anticipation to navigate your own complex world, to make more intentional choices, maybe anticipate challenges a bit better?
That's a great question to reflect on. How can these ideas reshape how you think about security, both in your work life and just personally? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today.